Trump's secret plan for the future. Are we ready? No cameras rolled that night. No phalanx of reporters stood poised with microphones. Nothing about the scene resembled a typical unveiling of a world-altering venture. And yet, in a single hush of dusklight, Trump arrived at a remote mountaintop estate to meet a select group of strategists, economists, and even a few seemingly contradictory figures like environmental advocates and philanthropic dreamers. All had come because the rumors were too compelling to dismiss. He's got a secret blueprint, the whispers said, a master plan that could change everything if it's real. Tonight, I'm taking you inside that rumored blueprint, an idea so sweeping that it might recast the way our global systems work, or it might remain a mere pipe dream overshadowed by the louder side of politics. Stick with me until the final paragraphs, because that's where you'll find the hidden piece, an astonishing twist few suspected, which might answer the real question. Are we ready for what Trump envisions? We begin in a rather unremarkable corridor leading to a secure conference room. The estate itself was old money property, perched high in pine forests, with labyrinthine hallways that smelled faintly of oak and aged leather. Over decades, it had hosted silent negotiations for everything from land treaties to philanthropic mergers. And on this particular day, nearly 24 individuals arrived quietly, each bearing only cryptic instructions on where to meet, what security protocols to follow, and an advisory that no advance notice should be given to the press. Even top aides didn't quite know the agenda. The hush was unrelenting. That alone signaled something big might be brewing. Inside that wood-paneled conference room, a simple wooden table dominated the space. No screens, no stage. A scattering of chairs circled it. At precisely 7 p.m., Trump entered with minimal fanfare, wearing an unassuming suit and flanked by just one close advisor. Observers quietly noted that this was far from the flamboyant style they'd come to expect in public events. He gave each person a silent handshake, as if greeting old allies, though many were actually meeting him for the first time. Then, with a gentle, almost casual motion, he placed a thick folder of documents on the table. Some accounts say that folder had no label, while others remember a cryptic emblem akin to a stylized globe. Either way, everyone stared at it, sensing that the night's revelations lay inside. No one spoke for a moment. Time seemed to pause. Then Trump broke the silence with a calm, measured tone. "Thank you for coming. I appreciate your trust in exploring something that might seem radical at first glance. I've asked you all here because your expertise can shape whether this plan can live or die." The group included economists from leading institutions, environmental scholars, philanthropic heads, a few wealthy industrialists, and even an ex-diplomat from a small island nation threatened by rising seas. A bizarre mix, to be sure, united by curiosity. He flipped open the folder. "Over the past years," he began, "I've listened quietly, researched quietly. Everyone's fixated on short-term wins, old models. But there's a path I believe can pivot us toward a more sustainable, balanced future. I'm calling it the Horizon Initiative for now." Some in the room took notes, others just watched. Trump pressed on. "This plan involves realigning resources, rethinking how we handle technology, bridging philanthropic capital with business acumen, and addressing global crises at scale. I've studied the data, run the projections. If we can unify behind it, maybe we shift entire paradigms." Skepticism rippled through the group. The question on many minds: is this a new brand pitch or some half-baked philanthropic stunt? A tall economist from a major university almost voiced that, but he kept silent, perhaps anticipating that the subsequent details might clarify everything. Trump then methodically introduced broad strokes, a multi-tier approach that reimagined investment in sustainable infrastructure, a universal framework for labor and resource distribution, and a philanthropic-driven tech leap aiming to bring advanced knowledge tools to developing regions. More than that, he explained it as a self-sustaining system, not reliant on indefinite charity or ephemeral political deals. People were stunned. Some had come expecting an ambitious business deal, not a near-utopian roadmap. The plan had 5 pillars, Trump explained. Resource realignment, Instead of random exploitation, we target the most urgent needs with strategic capital, ensuring vital technology and raw materials go where they genuinely solve problems, not just yield profit. Infrastructure equity, a standardized approach to roads, green power grids, and communication systems globally, funded in part by philanthropic contributions, but structured to become financially self-sustaining over time. Tech renaissance. Harness advanced AI and knowledge platforms to elevate education, entrepreneurship, and local empowerment, especially in marginalized areas that remain cut off from a modern economy. Environmental reciprocity, not mere conservation, but a plan that invests in restoring ecosystems while responsibly harnessing them, bridging the gap between climate activism and industrial reality. Social cohesion, a set of guidelines encouraging corporations and nations to commit to certain fairness standards, livable wages, local input in resource decisions, cultural respect for indigenous communities. Lofty indeed. At first, the group listened in near disbelief. For many, the concept of philanthropic synergy with corporate might have proven hollow in the past, just PR campaigns with no real transformation. But Trump said that for the plan to work, it needed an anchor, a massive, globally recognized trust that would unify philanthropic funds, private investments, and partial public grants. That trust, in turn, would allocate resources to projects that adhered to these 5 pillars. It's not a socialist model, nor a capitalist free-for-all, he explained. It's a hybrid that aims to fix real blind spots. And I'm ready to seed it significantly if others join in good faith. Confusion blossomed. People started to ask, so you want to set up a new system that transcends standard politics, run by an organization that you partially oversee? The alarm bells. Is this an attempt at a global power grab behind a mask of altruism? But then came the stunner. Trump declared he wouldn't head it. I'm only facilitating its creation. The trust leadership should be a diverse council. People from philanthropic, ecological, social, and yes, business backgrounds. My role is to gather initial momentum, but the governance must be transparent and multi-stakeholder. The ex-diplomat from the island nation exhaled, half relieved, half mystified. This was not typical Trump. Yet there he was, speaking calmly about checks and balances, about an impetus for unity he believed the global system lacked. For a moment, a hush enveloped the table. Then questions erupted. Some demanded specifics. How do we handle the shift for industries reliant on fossil fuels? Others pressed, where does the capital come from if it's not pure philanthropy? Is it mostly private equity? If so, what's the ROI for investors? Another angle asked about ensuring local governance. The queries hammered in from all sides. Trump, unwavering, provided a thick binder containing data projections, case studies of smaller-scale success stories around the world, and sample policies that could be adapted. Observers realized he'd done deep homework. This wasn't a half-baked notion. He'd apparently consulted experts quietly for years, building a mosaic of best practices. But why so quiet, they asked. He paused, looking around the room, then said something akin to, if I'd pitched this publicly from day one, cynics would tear it apart as a vanity project. Or politicians would polarize it. We needed a stealth approach. Gather real solutions first, refine them. Then, once it's robust, we reveal it. That's why you're all here. Your scrutiny matters. If we want to pivot humanity's trajectory, we can't rely on old illusions or frantic PR. People nodded in guarded approval. Even those who had disliked him had to concede the logic of proceeding carefully. Now, let me ask you, dear reader, do you think ambitious global plans can truly bypass the usual political rancor by maintaining secrecy until they're fully formed, or does that risk ignoring essential democratic input? Let me know in the comments, because that question stands at the crux of how grand designs either flourish or fail. As the night wore on, participants drilled deeper into specifics. The philanthropic leaders were intrigued, but wanted to ensure accountability. The industrialists asked about guaranteeing stable returns. Not out of greed, they insisted, but out of practicality. No one invests billions for zero security. Ecologists demanded robust environmental safeguards. referencing times they'd been burned by false promises. Trump responded calmly, detailing a blueprint for third-party oversight committees that would publicly release progress metrics. Additionally, he suggested capping investor dividends if social or ecological goals weren't met, a radical notion that had jaws dropping. Sacrifice short-term gains to secure the future. Simple math, he said with a small shrug. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, uncertain if they were hearing the same figure they'd once known in the media. Sometime around 3 a.m., after hours of intense discussion, the meeting adjourned. Observers left the conference room to their respective guest suites in the estate. The mood was electric. Some felt they had glimpsed a plan so large that, if successful, it could overshadow the next few decades of global progression. Others worried it was too utopian. Sure, he has money, but can this patchwork of philanthropic and corporate interests truly unify? A philanthropic heiress murmured. Another participant commented, "At least he's bridging that gap nobody else attempts. Maybe that counts for something." But overall, people recognized that next steps required more than talk. Implementation demanded alignment from governments, big capital, local communities. And that scale was daunting. In the subsequent days, breakout teams formed within the estate: a tech group, an ecological group, an economic group, a philanthropic synergy group. Each hammered out potential frameworks. Trump floated among them, mostly listening, occasionally offering a clarifying remark. Some participants found it surreal. He's letting specialists shape the plan, they said, instead of dominating the conversation. A few cynics suspected that once they delivered a polished framework, he'd brand it as his personal empire. But no sign of that emerged, at least not then. The vibe was uncommonly collaborative, fueled by a sense that the world teeters on multiple crises: climate emergencies, wealth gaps, precarious governance. If someone could spark a cohesive remedy, might it be worth setting old biases aside? Among these teams, certain friction points flared. The philanthropic synergy group argued that local communities needed representation in the final governance council. Meanwhile, the economic group hesitated. Would local communities have the know-how to manage multi-billion-dollar budgets effectively? The environmental group insisted on strict carbon regulations, but the industrial side worried about losing competitiveness. Trump, quietly absorbing these debates, occasionally insisted, "We cannot compromise on the principle that communities are not mere bystanders. Their voice must be direct." That statement shocked certain business tycoons who had historically never championed local veto power. And yet, with the entire plan riding on synergy, they realized ignoring communities might sabotage everything. As the working sessions ended, the group prepared a preliminary framework. It was far from complete, but served as a proof of concept. They labeled it Project Horizon, referencing Trump's earlier mention of that name. The document spanned hundreds of pages, detailing potential pilot regions, financial instruments, oversight structures, and timelines for rolling out new technologies or infrastructure. Everyone recognized that finalizing it would require months, if not years, of refinement. But the gist was tangible enough to show potential donors, governments, or corporations that this was no idle fantasy. Now, let's pivot to the question, what about unveiling it to the world? Some participants pressed for a giant global summit, with cameras and grand speeches, to galvanize public support. But Trump disagreed, stating that the official rollout should happen after forging initial pilot deals with real communities, ensuring proof of concept. Another faction wanted a middle ground, some moderate publicity to stoke interest. The debate lingered. Finally, they compromised. A short, discreet statement might be released eventually, confirming the existence of a new multi-stakeholder initiative in development, but not revealing everything. Meanwhile, the thick hush around Trump's secret plan for the future began to leak out in drips. People left the estate, returning to their normal lives, telling colleagues cryptic half-sentences about an extraordinary blueprint. Some posted vague hints on social media, fueling speculation. Online conspiracy communities latched onto it, spinning wild tales. He's building a breakaway civilization, or he's messing with alien tech, or he's forging a new global monarchy. None of which matched reality, but once rumors swirl in the digital era, it's unstoppable. The handful of participants who knew the truth mostly stayed silent, bound by courtesy or the unwavering sense that the plan needed time to mature without media scrutiny. In a surprise twist, one philanthropic leader, a venerable figure named Maribel Rohn, decided to talk discreetly to a top investigative journalist, hoping to create an honest, nuanced feature. That journalist wrote a piece describing the broad outlines of a radical philanthropic economic synergy designed to solve major global crises, though not naming specific individuals. The article's final paragraph read, "One central figure, once derided as an unstoppable capitalist, now emerges as the improbable catalyst for a moral and structural renaissance. We never expected to see such an audacious crossroad. Is the world ready?" The piece garnered moderate attention, but the mainstream press mostly overlooked it, overshadowed by daily political dramas. Still, within specialized circles, that article ignited curiosity. People called it the Horizon Concept. Certain smaller nations, facing existential threats from climate or trade exploitation, quietly approached known participants, volunteering to host pilot programs. A few giant corporations recognized potential new markets in that synergy approach. Even some hardcore activists, though mistrustful, conceded that if the plan truly integrated local autonomy, it might succeed where older top-down models failed. And throughout it all, Trump remained mostly in the background. No flamboyant press events, no brand-labeled announcements, just the occasional private meeting. The big question is, why would a figure historically comfortable with public spectacle choose a subdued path for a supposedly monumental plan? Observers differ. Some say he realized that big ideas get shot down fast in polarizing environments. Others guess he wanted to show genuine humility, indicating that a collaborative approach can't revolve around a single personality. Another rumor claims he had no illusions about immediate acceptance, preferring a slow build so that once the plan was fully ready, it would be unstoppable by naysayers. Perhaps a mixture of these reasons. Let me insert a second direct question for you, the viewer. Do you believe real societal transformation is better achieved quietly behind the scenes, or do we need mass mobilization to ensure democratic accountability? Drop your stance in the comments, because that debate runs to the heart of how we handle big leaps in progress. Months passed. Pilot discussions began forming. A small coastal region battered by storms and erosion expressed interest in the plan's proposed climate-resilient infrastructure. A landlocked African community sought the plan's advanced educational modules. A philanthropic consortium offered partial funding if it could run certain tech experiments to leapfrog older systems. The puzzle pieces were slotting into place, albeit slowly. Insiders said the synergy was fragile. One misstep, and the entire tapestry might unravel. But the fact that any synergy was taking shape at all under a banner associated with Trump was extraordinary, given how certain communities had historically been suspicious. Still, not everyone was on board. Some big political figures felt threatened by a cross-border initiative that bypassed typical government channels. Certain business magnates grumbled that capping ROI for large investors, as the plan suggested, was unpalatable. Hardcore activists feared infiltration by corporate agendas. Disagreement rose in certain pilot areas. A handful of local politicians tried to extort personal gain. Navigating these challenges required a subtle hand, with participants leaning on shared ethics spelled out in the plan's core documents. In some cases, they overcame obstacles by offering transparent, local-driven solutions. In others, they had to walk away, refusing to replicate old patterns of corruption. The project's evolution was messy but ongoing. Throughout this labyrinth, the man at the center, Trump, remained a paradox. He rarely gave statements about the plan, but behind the scenes, he was said to be quietly unblocking bureaucratic tangles, roping in new philanthropic donors, and even conferring with alternative energy startups. A small number of watchers insisted that he was rewriting his legacy one covert step at a time, focusing on tangible results over brand polish. Others cynically guessed he'd eventually stage a big reveal when the moment was ripe. But that moment never came, or at least not in the expected timeline. Instead, as pilot after pilot launched, local communities sang praise of the synergy. The mainstream press half-credited it to philanthropic consortia, often missing Trump's involvement. One might ask, is he fine with overshadowing his own role? Possibly yes, if it ensures the plan remains free from partisan sabotage. The user question arises, can a plan truly reshape the future if it never harnesses public momentum around a recognized figure? Or does anonymity protect it from politicization? The participants seemingly concluded that once the synergy speaks through results, like improved living standards, ecological balance, new learning modules, public acceptance follows organically. Then came an event that tested the plan's resilience, a devastating coastal storm hitting one pilot region. Traditional infrastructure buckled, yet the synergy-funded protective systems held up better than local official projects. The result? Thousands saved from flood devastation, minimal casualties. Local coverage raved about these new solutions. Suddenly, the synergy approach gained credibility. People wanted to replicate its success. That's when a local journalist discovered that some of the project's legal and financial frameworks traced back to Trump's personal trust. The journalist broadcast a piece titled Unseen Guardian. Did Trump's covert initiative save our shores? That story soared on social media, resurrecting the phrase Trump's secret plan for the future. Once again, it triggered heated debate, gratitude from some, suspicion from others. But the cat was out of the bag for that region. Yes, this synergy approach had proven life-saving potential. And so we near the final stretch of the story. The plan remains in a delicate, iterative state. Multiple pilot sites operate quietly, forging incremental transformations in energy grids, local schooling, and resource management. Certain philanthropic networks have united under the synergy banner, while some big corporations carefully sign on, seeing future profit in stable, sustainable markets. Meanwhile, typical cynics still question if these partial successes can scale globally or if deeper structural powers will eventually sabotage it. So why the question? Are we ready? Because the plan's next phase, as described in rumored internal updates, calls for widespread adoption. Dozens of new localities, thousands of tech modules, billions in pooled capital. That requires a global shift in mindset. Acceptance of new ROI models, local empowerment, rigorous environmental checks. Are we, as a world, truly ready to break from the old short-sighted cycles? Or will the synergy approach end up stifled, overshadowed by the same cynicism that's historically undone grand ideas? And that's where the final twist emerges. Over a year after the initial meeting, a private letter surfaced, presumably from Trump to a top philanthropic ally, referencing a hidden timeline. The letter stated that once synergy pilot results hit a critical mass, the entire plan could become a formal global institution, something akin to a new Bretton Woods for sustainability and equity. The letter included a rhetorical flourish. The world can evolve beyond archaic illusions, but only if we evolve our hearts as well as our wallets. That line, so uncharacteristic of old Trump rhetoric, left watchers in awe. Did it suggest a culminating launch for a global synergy organization, reminiscent of post-World War II transformations, but oriented around sustainability, fairness, and local empowerment? Some see it as the crowning step that would unify all these local successes under an official banner, forging alliances from Africa to Asia to the heartland of wealthy nations. Others claim it's naive to think a single framework can supersede centuries of entrenched national interest. But the letter's existence hints that the synergy approach was never meant to remain a patchwork. If the pilot data convinces enough key players, if philanthropic capital aligns, if local communities keep benefiting, maybe the synergy could become an unstoppable wave. Or, cynics might say, it's too big to be real. destined for friction and partial meltdown. Still, each new month sees small expansions. Another success story arises here, another bridging project there, fueling quiet momentum. The plan, ironically, might shape the next decade without a flamboyant unveiling. That's the paradox of Trump's secret plan for the future. Maybe the grand reveal is less about press events and more about every local victory building unstoppable impetus. That's the measure of readiness, not waiting for a single announcement, but gradually weaving a new reality from the bottom up, anchored by philanthropic, corporate, and local synergy. Let's close with a question. Do you, as a viewer, trust that a slow-building wave of pilot-based successes is the best route for large-scale transformation? Or do you believe only a massive, immediate global treaty can truly shift the planet's direction? Let me know your stance in the comments, because the synergy plan rests on the idea that incremental, localized wins accumulate into unstoppable force. That, dear listener, is the essence of Trump's secret plan for the future. Are we ready? Over the course of hush gatherings, clandestine pilot projects, and philanthropic synergy, a quiet revolution might be unfolding. It's not guaranteed to succeed. Obstacles loom at every turn. But the mere fact that an improbable coalition is forming around a blueprint that merges moral impetus with business sense stands out in a jaded era. Are we ready? Possibly not, but readiness often follows necessity. If the synergy approach continues to deliver results on the ground, more communities, more donors, and more governments could step in. And maybe, just maybe, the momentum builds to a crescendo that redefines how we harness resources, empower local voices, and measure success in a world teetering on multiple crises. In a final reflection, time will tell whether the synergy approach births a new global structure or fizzles under old rivalries. But every sign suggests this is an evolving story, not a sealed conclusion. For those who once dismissed the notion that Trump could spearhead a moral or socially beneficial direction, the synergy might either confirm or refute their cynicism. For now, we watch from the sidelines, uncertain but intrigued, as the slow weave of pilots, philanthropic trusts, environmental frameworks, and local empowerment merges into a hidden tapestry, steadily unveiling itself in pockets around the globe. And if it triumphs, or even half succeeds, we might look back on these hush-hush gatherings as the start of an unthinkable alliance. An alliance that, ironically, might hinge on whether we, collectively, are ready to break from the past and embrace a synergy we never expected.